As accusations of widespread anti-Semitism throughout the British Labour Party continue to emerge, alarming questions are also being raised. Former British Prime Minister Gordon Brown addressed a Jewish Labour conference this week, calling on all Labour members to stand in solidarity with the Jewish people and against racism in the party. It's about who we are, who we stand for, what makes us tick, and about the soul of the Labour Party, said Brown. But for some, it's far too little too late. Former Chief Rabbi in the UK, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, has called the apparent rise in anti-Semitism an existential threat, and he described how many European Jews are now feeling the pressures to leave. Well, joining us with more on this issue is political consultant Oliver Wirth and Dr. Natan Aridan of the Gurion Research Institute for the Study of Israel and Zionism. Thank you both very much for coming in, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, Oliver, let me start with you. Is there an existential threat against the Jews of Europe and the UK?
Well, I'd first of all say that Rabbi Sacks is one that Chief Rabbi Sacks has never been known as one to grandstand or make political statements for the sake of it.
Yeah, this is a first for him.
This is certainly very rare for him to say anything massively political. So when he comes out and says something of this nature, I think it's time to take notice. In terms of an existential threat, do I believe something major is going to happen tomorrow, in a week or a year? Probably not, and I certainly hope not. But we know that when the political establishment stops to show empathy to the Jewish community, it is the beginning of what can turn into something much more serious. And can that develop into an existential threat? Well, I think if Chief Rabbi Sacks has reason to believe so, I've got no reason to doubt that that's the case.
I would agree with most of the comments. The question here in terms of existential threat is that there have been more incidents of anti-Semitism which have been reported to the police over recent years. This is a very worrying effect, and originally I think many of the Jewish community have managed to put this under the carpet, but with a massive demonstration when the Jewish community leaders turned out, that has never happened in British Jewry politics. This is a very serious situation in which I think the Labour leadership needs to deal with as quickly as possible.
Well, so, an argument that often comes up is, maybe people are just more sensitive now than they were. And it's like, no, maybe now they're just more empowered to say something than they were in the past. So, which is it? Are we seeing a rise in anti-Semitism or a rise in the comfort of anti-Semites to come to the fore and the rise in the comfort level of the Jews to kind of come and say, hey, there's something really terribly wrong here?
I think with the social media and the influx over recent years, there are more outlets for anti-Semitism. But in preparing for this interview, I thought the most important thing is to explain that the thing about anti-Semitism is connected to Israel. Israel is considered to be a pariah state by Jeremy Corbyn. And to a large extent, Israel has no right to exist as a Jewish state. This has given a tremendous influx to others who attack Israel and do so through the Jewish community. It is basically saying, and the most important thing is, Israel has no right to exist in its borders, even before 1967. The issue is not just the West Bank, which is important, it's also before 67, and this is pervasive. Just one other thing, when I was in Britain during the 7/7 bombings, the then Mayor Ken Livingstone understood why Islamic terrorists would attack, saying that they had lived in refugee camps, but these people had second, third generation from the subcontinent of Africa. And this, I think, explains the misunderstanding and the fact that one can be Jewish, be proud of being Jewish, and supporting the state of Israel. This is no longer considered legitimate.
Well, I mean, I agree mostly, though I think the centre of the debate is somewhat different in that, for me, the problem with Jeremy Corbyn is that quite uniquely, he doesn't allow the Jewish community to define for themselves what is victimization and what is anti-Semitism.
Well, and he wouldn't accept
That's right. What is an internationally accepted definition of anti-Semitism. Now, we can focus on whether it's because of Israel or this or that, but the reality is that Jeremy Corbyn would not dream of telling the black community what they should and should not consider to be racist, the Muslim community what is and what is not Islamophobic, or any other minority group when they have the right to feel afraid and victimized. That is uniquely held for the Jewish community. The Jewish community alone cannot decide for themselves when I feel afraid, when I feel victimized, when I'm concerned. He believes that's for Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party to dictate when that is and is not acceptable.
So again, is that symptomatic of something more insidious and maybe under the radar, or is there something kind of bubbling up within the Labour Party that's kind of causing this?
Oh, there's something bubbling up. And I think that if there is one occasion, and Naz Shah, a Labour MP last year in Bradford, posted something anti-Semitic on Facebook, and then immediately after, a mea culpa apologised and worked hard afterwards on reforming and better understanding anti-Semitism. Jeremy Corbyn, we're not talking about an isolated incident. We are talking about laying wreaths on terrorist graves in Tunisia. We are talking about doubting whether British Zionists can understand British irony. We're talking about not taking seriously complaints of anti-Semitism within the party, punishing people that call him an anti-Semite, and now not adopting an internationally recognized definition of anti-Semitism. That in isolation, one event you can think maybe a misstep, maybe a mistake, but when you put these events together, that is anti-Semitism.
All right, so, again, Dr. Aridan, I want to come back to you. Where do we go from here? What do we do with this? What is the Labour Party, capable of doing if it were willing to take the steps to rid themselves of this kind of notion that they are anti-Semitic and maybe to downplay the anti-Semitic attitudes in the UK?
First of all, within the next couple of days, we'll learn about it. But I think the most tragic thing is whatever the outcome is, it'll be bad for Anglo Jewry. The reason is, A, if they decide to adopt all the principles adopted by the 31 countries on anti-Semitism, then this will be seen as Jewish Zionist pressure. If they fail to do this, then the Labour Party continues to be seen as anti-Semitic and the issue still remains. This is, for Anglo Jewry, whatever the outcome, is going to be very problematic. But let me say, when I was head of the Israel Society at Leeds University, following the anti-Zionist resolution, in the morning I was organising demonstrations with the Labour Party, which I was active in, for helping Asians against anti-fascists. When I got onto the university in the evening, we were banned from having any activities because, being pro-Israel, we were Zionists and racists. This thing has been an undercurrent throughout the party for many years, as in other parties.
So it's not new, like former Prime Minister Brown is suggesting.
No, but other leaders have stamped it out. Jeremy Corbyn has not stamped it out. He has not been unequivocal, and this is the major problem that the Labour Party has, which has always been a tolerant party.
But are other parties facing the same issue, and are those leaders stamping it out, or are we not seeing that same anti-Semitism in the other parties?
There are very important forces of anti-Semitism, but what's important, unique to the Labour Party, is the unions. This is not the same as in the Conservative Party, and year after year there are resolutions against Israel about being racist, about being apartheid. This doesn't happen in other parties.
All right, well, unfortunately we have to end it here, but thank you both, gentlemen, for coming in and talking with us about this.
Thank you.
Oliver Worth, Dr. Aridan, thank you so much.